Well, one of the first things that we need to take a look at in learning to graft queens is the grafting frame, what we call the queen cell bar frame. So it's pretty simple. I've got one here I'll show you. And it is, what I've done is just simply taken a traditional frame out of my, a plastic sheet out, and then I've added these little blocks of wood on the side. And what that affords me the opportunity to do is then take these bars. These bars actually will hold these queen cups, and then the bar slides in to the frame on these little grooves between the blocks of wood on each side. And I have made this one to where it would hold about 3 of them. Now, some of these are missing because I've used these and I've pulled some of these out. But as you can see, you can get 10 to 15 of these little cell cups across here. Here's some that I made that actually are made of wax that I make myself. I'll show you how to do that a little later. So you can put 3 rows of these in here to put in your starter hive. And again, you can put, I think I've gotten 15 on a bar, and so that would give me about 45 grafts. You want to leave about 2 inches between them just so you have enough room for the queen cell to go all the way down without being glued or waxed down to the one below it. So leave enough space, and I think the magic number right over here of these blocks are about 1.5 inches, but you could certainly, looks like you can make them 2 inches and have enough room, but about 1.5 inches gives you the room that you need. And so this is a cell bar frame holding cell bars with cell cups on them. That's a proper terminology. And again, you can make this yourself. Just pop out the plastic frame, tap in 1.5 inch blocks on each side, leaving just enough room so you can slide these bars in. Well, let's talk about the bars for a minute. I'll get one and come a little closer to you. Where do you get the bars, and what do you do with the bars? You can buy these bars. I've bought some of these already sort of cut, just right, angled, buying from bead companies like this. Certainly you can make your own, which I did for many years, so I've just got a huge collection of all of these. And these little cups I purchased. I never reuse them. I just buy these from bead companies, and they're called wide base cell cups. They're not push-in. I buy the wide base cell cups, and they have a little bit of a tip on it that isn't a perfect, it's not a perfect post, it's a little oblong shaped. So when you stick them in, you can twist it until it grabs this cut, and then it just hangs there very nicely and doesn't fall out. So as you can see here, this is what it looks like up close. It's got the queen cups fitting down into these grooves. And as you can see, you may have to notch out the edges a little bit, as on this one, so it can fit in between your 1.5 inch blocks. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case for you. And I want to tell you about the posts. I'll show you that kind of up close again. You can see how these posts on these wide base cups just fit right in to this groove, and then you can twist it a little bit to lock it in. These are some of the queen cups that I've made out of my own wax. And it's just simply convenient. It's time-wise, it probably doesn't save you a lot of money, but it's just convenient. It does take more time to make them, is what I'm saying. So, but I'll show you how to do that. It's fun to make them if you choose to make your own queen cups. Okay, so what I want to show you now is getting started in grafting and how you would go about grafting your larva. So the first thing that I want you to do is I want you to arrange your workspace in what I call a dry run. And what I mean by that is I want you to set your workspace all up without having your larvae brought in. They're still out in the hive. But you want to make sure that everything is here, and the only way to know how that is going to happen is by doing a dry run. So what you're going to need some sort of a magnifying glass like this, so you can look down and see the larva that you want to graft. Or you're going to have to go to Walmart or some Dollar General store and buy some reading glasses. And if you're typically farsighted, you're going to need reading glasses to look down. You want to have good eyesight. If you're nearsighted, you probably take your glasses off and you can see down in there. So what we'll do is we're just going to do a dry run, and I'll tell you, this really helps you so much. So let me show you what a dry run means. It means that we're going to set our workspace up. I've got a frame here. Now this is pollen. It's just a frame that I pulled out that it's drawn out, but it has pollen in it, real dark pollen. But it's going to be used as our dummy run. And so when we bring the real frame in that has the larva in it, we don't want it to get dry because larvae can dry out. And so that means that we're going to usually take a paper towel, and I happen to have prepared a little bit of paper towels. I use some blue shop rags like this. This is going to help me keep my larva moist because I'm going to be grafting from one side and then I'm going to flip it over to the other side. They're swimming in a pool of royal jelly, so if you let that dry out, they will be hungry and possibly be malnutritioned on that. So we want to keep them wet. We don't want that royal jelly to evaporate quickly. So what we're going to do is set that on the table like this. Now I can grab some of these little plastic queen cages like this. You can grab whatever's handy, because what we're going to do is kind of set up the mock grafting scenario. In frames like this, the cells angle up about at an 18-degree angle. And so when you're grafting, if you put it flat on the table, you'll see like this that these cells are facing a little bit away from you. And so if I jack this up a little bit, then I can see right down there. But what really works well for me is to make this frame, the top bar, face me. And then I only have to raise up the back side just a little bit, and I can see straight down. It compensates for the 18-degree angle. Does that make sense? So I've got my towel, wet towel, keeping this side moist. I've got my little block. It's about between 1/2 inch and 3/4 of an inch elevation on the bottom of the frame, and I just let it rest on the table. Now when I'm looking straight down in there. Now I have my cell bar, if you're familiar with these terms, so I need to go ahead and get my bag of cell cups ready. And these are some that I've purchased. Some people ask me, do you clean those? Do you have to sanitize them? No, they come in bags that are ready to go for me. I may kind of look in there occasionally and blow on them if I see some dust. They do need to be clean. So what you want to do in this case is just stay a little bit away from the edge, because that's going to be your wooden block on the cell bar frame. In your case, if you're wanting to do like an awesome number like I do, I like to raise 45 or 60 at a time. You want to really put these cells pretty close together, these cups. If you're just making a few, you can only put 1 or 2 on a frame. It's really up to you. But just for a mock scenario. Now, also, like I've told you, when you insert these in here, you can twist them and you can feel them lock in. And if you're handy with the saw, you can make your own cell bars like this with the kerf cut to accommodate this post, or you can certainly just go ahead and buy your own from most of the major bead companies. Sell these little kits that may come with these bars. For years I made my own bars, and then as I teach more and more queen rearing classes on site, we just buy them because we give them to our students as part of their training. But so this is one that I purchased. So it looks something like this, all ready to go. And you can take your mouth and go just kind of knock any dust out. That one didn't stay good, so I'm glad I tested that. Put it in there again, a little wide cut on the bar, so you can see that they're all staying in there good. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, if you graft a larva and put it in this cup and you turn it upside down, won't it fall out? No, the royal jelly, the larva, very sticky, it's all going to be good. This is a dummy run. Another thing that I want to show you is I, again, have this cup of wet paper towels. I pride myself on keeping my larvae really moist, and that is the key to really having some good quality queens. So what I do, I take this moist paper towel. It's a shop rag. It holds water better than a paper towel because this shop rag is a little thicker material. And this is a trick that a lot of people miss. And what I do is I take it like this, and I'm going to scoot this forward for the camera a little more. Yeah. And I'll put it right here on the table next to where I'm grafting, like that. And the reason I do is because I'm going to graft a larva out of here, transfer it into my first cup. I'm going to do about 4 cups, 1, 2, 3, 4. And after 4 cups, I'm going to take this wet paper towel and cover the first 4 that I've done. And what that's doing, it's holding humidity over this royal jelly larva, 1-day-old larva that's sitting in these cups. If I don't use a paper towel, and for some reason I'm going slow grafting these 15 cups or whatever, then by the time I finish this one could be dried out, especially if I'm sitting in a room that has air conditioning in it and it's dehumidifying the air for me. So I'm wanting to cover up the grafts about every 4 at a time. 1, 2, 3, 4, cover 4. So when I'm on my last one, I've just got 4 showing. I do 4, and then I'm ready to go. That I protect those with moisture. I want to keep my 1-day-old larva sitting in a pool of royal jelly very, very moist on the grafting part. Now, also I mentioned I have this is a dry run, and a dry run allows you to realize you don't have everything, because you don't want to have your larva sitting here and realize that, uh-oh, my flashlight doesn't work. I got to go to town and buy flashlight batteries, because then all your larva is going to dry out, or you got to put it back in the hive. And so you want to make sure that you've got good lighting. You can see down in here. Lighting is essential. Now, nowadays, lighting is awesome. You can buy these little flashlights that have LED in them, and they will light up the world. So, don't get some old crappy flashlight that's dull on its bulbs or batteries and try to see anything. I don't enjoy using a magnifying glass, and the reason is because by the time I hold my flashlight and my magnifying glass, I've got no hands to do anything. Now, you can wear the lights on your head. Usually they fit around your head, and that way you don't have to hold a flashlight. But I'll show you how I do it. Here's one of my grafting tools from last season. But so okay, so we got our cell bar and our cups ready. We've got our grafting tool in the hand. We've got our wet paper towels. We've got water in a cup if we need to re-moisten something. So this is kind of our basic setup. Eyes and flashlight and tools, water, we're ready to go. So if this is and was a real frame consisting of the larva, you simply look down in there and find one that's the age that you want. And what you're looking for is about a 1-day-old larva. And in this case, that's about a comma on a page. Let me just throw one of these images up right now, and you can see which ones are graftable here in this image. And that's what you're looking for. A very small larva. It's really tiny. You're going to just keep looking until you see the one that you want to graft. So before we get into that though, this is simply a dry run. And so we're going to practice. If I was grafting, I would pick that up, put it in here, put my wet paper towel on. I've got my glasses, everything. Okay, this is good. So now I'm ready to go out and do some grafting because everything is in position. But do this dry run first. Okay, so now in the event that we're ready to graft, what you're going to do is actually you're going to go out to your hive that has this awesome characteristics that you want, and you're going to go out there and actually bring in a frame of eggs and 1-day-old larvae. I always try to find the perfect type of frame that I'm looking for with just the right age larva in it. Maybe we'll get lucky on this one. Ah, yeah, this is money. Make sure the queen isn't on it. We don't want to accidentally sweep off the queen and injure her in some way. All right, well this will work good. Now what we're going to do now is sweep these nurse bees off with a feather. And you've probably seen me use feather, I use grass, tall grass, flowers. The old timers often use feathers, and so what you want to do is just take that feather and just start flicking the bees back onto the hive like this. And if you want to, you can drop it back to kind of keep it lower in the hive. And this is just so that I can get all the little bees off. I got to take this back and graft off of it. And we'll try it again. Other side. Okay, that's it. We're going to take it back and do a little grafting. And again, it's something that you need to develop a skill to see. But you will. It's going to look something like what you're looking at here in this image. It's going to be royal jelly. And you want to make sure you don't want a frame just of eggs because you can't graft eggs. But if you get a frame of one-day-old larvae, you're likely to see eggs on that. You want a sufficient number of the appropriate aged larvae, which again, I'm showing you, you want to select 3 days from when the egg was laid are the first day, the first stage of the larva, the first day of being a larva stage, which is day 3 from when the egg is laid, if that makes sense. And it's swimming in an ample supply of royal jelly. Now you may want to feed that colony pretty heavily the week before you pull them out, just to make sure that all the bees can produce royal jelly to make these grafts easier to handle. If they're swimming in a pool of royal jelly, they're easy to graft out. Okay, so once you go out to your bee yard, you're going to pull out the frame that you love. You're not going to shake it. That will dislodge the grafts. What you want to do is gently with your bee brush or your turkey feather, brush the bees off, all these nurse bees. Just hold this frame up, kind of lower it back into your hive and brush off the bees. These are the nurse bees. Just brush them off. And then you're going to be able to see that the bees are mostly off. Now there'll be some bees hanging on. You'll just have to start walking toward your building, toward your room, and keep brushing them off as you walk. And then once you get into the place where you're ready to graft, like we're going to simulate now, you put your paper towels down, you get all your equipment ready, elevate the back of the bottom bar just about an inch maybe. And then you want to place another wet paper towel over your frame. And that keeps the grafts that you're looking at on your side moist as well. So it's good to do that on top as well. Now look at this image here. This is day 1 of the larva stage. You can see egg, you can see the one in the middle, and you can see the one just off to your right. Obviously, we can't graft an egg. The one in the middle is perfect, and the one to the right is way too old. It's about a 5 to 8 day old larva ready to be capped over and pupate. So the one in the middle is swimming in royal jelly. You can see it's shaped like the letter C, only facing the other way. Now, I want to tell you, in this case, when you're handling this, this is very small. You're going to be overwhelmed. When I teach these classes, my students are overwhelmed how small that larva is. So just be prepared. You're going to need good glasses, okay? I'm telling you that in advance so you can go out and make sure you can see up close really well. Some of you may be up in age and you may have little shaky hands, or maybe you don't feel like you have the hand coordinations that it's going to require to graft, but you can. You just have to find a way to brace your hand against your table or put your arm on a box or something. You can stabilize it. I've seen this many times where people had shaky hands and they were able to brace themselves. So don't be intimidated by this kind of work. You can do it. In this image here, the larva is shaped like the letter C. The open side is to the left, and the closed part of the C, of course, is to the right by the blue arrow. Now for me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my tool on the closed part of the C. Where the arrow is, that's where my tool is going to go. And the way it's going to work is, right where that blue arrow is pointing, the tip of my Chinese grafting tool actually goes and touches that royal jelly off to the right side there. Between the royal jelly and the blue arrow is where the tip of my Chinese grafting tool will go, and then when it hits the bottom of the cell, it will curve, it will bend, and go underneath the royal jelly and that larva. And at that point, you simply pull up. You don't have to push any buttons on your Chinese tool at this time. You're just pulling them out, and you pull up on it, and it's on the tip of your Chinese grafting tool. And if you do it really carefully, you don't really actually touch the larva. It actually is just touching the royal jelly that surrounds the larva. And once you get it on your Chinese grafting tool, or whatever tool you're using, you simply lower the tip of your tool to where it bends, and it makes the larva sits flat on the queen cup, on the bottom of that plastic cup. You just begin to slowly push the tip of your Chinese grafting tool on the top, that little button there. Push it, which slides the plunger, which will push that larva off onto the base of that cell cup. And be careful not to flip the larva over. At this point, she's only breathing on the spiracles on the top side. If you flip her over, I don't believe she'll be able to breathe, and she'll suffocate. So that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt to change the orientation, which way they're facing. Just don't flip them upside down when you set them back in. Some questions come into play about priming queen cups. Is that necessary? No. Bees know what to do. Some people will graft and place royal jelly in the cups ahead of the grafts, but studies have shown that that really doesn't make that much difference. So we just do what's called dry drafting. And again, keep them covered with a damp cloth as you continue to make these grafts. So if you kind of watch how I handle it here, you'll see me, if I was doing a live grafting here off of this frame, I'm simply going to look, and I'm going to find the graft that I want. I'm going to orientate this part, the plunger side, facing up, because I want to scoop it up so that when I push the plunger button down, I can watch it come off. So I get the white part of the plunger facing up toward me. I'm going to look around until I find one. There's a good one, and I'm going to go in and I'm going to go in. Sometimes you may want to put a little bit of a curve, a little bit of a bend on the tip of your grafting tool like this. If you can make it just bend ever so slightly on the tip. I don't know if you can see that on the camera or not, but you can bend it a little bit so that when you go in, it goes under the royal jelly. So you kind of come in, I like a little more bend than that. You kind of come in and stay on the side of the cell wall, let it go under, oh, that's perfect, and scoop up that royal jelly. And then you pull it straight up like this, and then you come out to your first cup over here, and you get ready, put your finger right here on top of the button, lower it down until this real flexible material on the tip is sitting on the base of the cell. And now push the button down as you pull up like that. Very, very easy to do, but it does take some time. Again, you do 1, 2, 3, 4, and at that point, after doing 4, cover those 4 up with a wet cloth like this, and then you can continue on grafting number 5 the same way until you get these 4, and then pull your cloth over more, and that way these stay really moist. Now what you want to do is continue on grafting like this until all cups are filled. If you're doing just 15, or if you're going to do like my daughter Carrie here is doing in the image, I'm overseeing her back in the background, but she is doing a good number here. I can't really decide how many that is by looking, but it's a good 40 or maybe more of queen cups that she's grafted. She's putting them in now because she's ready to take them out. So what you're going to do is mount them just like I've shown you. You push these bars back into the grooves on the frame that I was showing you. So at this point, once you put them in, this particular frame will be ready to be placed in the starter hive. But some of these bars may be loose, and if they are, you can see Carrie concentrating on getting them in there just right. I usually keep a little bit of propolis or wax handy, and I can place some wax or propolis in that groove between the blocks on the edges, and that way it kind of grabs, or it's a little tighter. You can use just a ball of propolis or wax to tighten that up a little bit. If it's too loose, you don't want it falling out, or that would be bad. But get those bars in there and secure them with propolis or wax. And then you can move them gently. The larva will not fall out. Don't worry about that. And now you're just going to go out to your starter hive. As you can see here, this little hive that I've made up, it's ready to roll. And look at those beautiful grafts and cell cups that are in there. It looks like a really good number. And you just place them right in the middle. And all these nurse bees, along with the food that they have on these other frames, they're going to start feeding these cups. Now in this case, the queenlessness of this starter hive, along with all the nurse bees observing these vertical hanging larvae in these cups of royal jelly, it will force them. They will know what to do, believe it or not. They will begin to give more royal jelly to these cups, and they will begin to elongate these cups with extra wax, as you can see here. Now, the picture on the right is after 24 hours after we've gone back and pulled them out, and you can see they're working them, they're adding wax to these little cups. It's exactly what you want to see. They've added royal jelly. They're starting to build the wax queen cups in addition to the plastic on them. And that's how it works. So small colonies can start a lot of cells, but do not have the food resources to rear them all. And what that means is that a starter hive can start them, but they can't finish them. So in other words, we put all those bees that I told you about, nurse bees, into the starter box. 24 hours, they give them more royal jelly and start to build wax. But after about 24 hours, they won't maintain the level of royal jelly expression that they need. And that means that we're going to have to move them to a larger colony that has a larger amount of nurse bees in it. So at this point, you've got to move your grafts to what we call the finishing hive. You can leave one cell in the starter nook if you want to, and let that cell mature out, and that can become your little nuke box for a mating nook, or you can use it for a 5-frame nuke box. A lot of options there. If you've got the entrance closed, you'll need to open it. But when you pull this frame out of the starter hive, you'll see that it's got bees all over it, taking care of all these brand new 4-day-old larvae now, and they're feeding them and making wax, and it's going to look like that. When you pull it out of your starter hive, students, I want you to be sure and take all those bees with you. You're going to go to your finishing hive. Now, as you can see, the finishing hive to the left is simply a hive that I have that's a really strong, robust hive full of bees, as you can see. What you might be able to see in the image is I've put a queen excluder between the two deeps, and the queen is on the bottom. So there's no queen in the top deep. That is a finishing hive. It's simply any of your strong colonies where you have isolated the queen into the bottom deep, leaving no queen in the top. And that's all you really have to do. I don't really care about managing the brood at that point. Nurse bees are up there on open brood. It's fine. But I'm going to put this particular frame that has my grafts on it right in the center where that gap is into that finishing hive. So they go right in that top box. And since the queen is held down below the queen excluder, she will not come up and kill those grafts. Now, amazingly, those bees in this finishing hive will observe the frame that you're giving them with all those cells that are started, those queen cells that are started, and they don't question it. You would think they would say, hey, we got a queen. Why do we need to raise more? They don't. They don't question it. They just go to town and start working on them. And so make sure, though, that your laying queen in the bottom does not find a way to get up into the top. And so you want to make sure your queen excluder does hold that queen down. It can be a plastic one or a metal one. Just make sure there's not, that you get it on there correctly and it all works well. So the strong queen right hive, this finisher hive, has the population, has the nurse bees to go ahead and, as you can see here, finish out these cells. The finishing hive won't start cells. If you were to introduce those cups in there, as you did in your starter hive, they won't start them. But they will continue to finish them once you introduce them from a starter hive. They will care for them. And some of these images, you can see the pupa eating some royal jelly. This is what they do while they're inside that cell. And these are the cups that have resulted in the cells being pulled out nicely. Now, these cells, once you put them in that finishing hive, you have to remember that now these larvae are about 3 to 4 days old since you've placed them in there. And you do the math, that means they're going to emerge out of their cells in 13 days. I would warn you to go and pull them out on day 10. And 10 days after you've done your grafting. That makes them 13 days old. Most cells like this, queen cells, can be handled pretty safely on day 13. And before that, it can be a little tricky. But so if you go out there, you have to really set your smartphone alarms and everything. But you go back out there and you pull them up like Cree's doing here. And this is day 13 after you did your grafts. You've got to deal with these grafts. You've got to put them somewhere. Otherwise, one queen will emerge in a day or 2 or 3, and she will she'll actually sting through these cells and kill the rest of them, and they'll fight. So separate them before they have a chance in this image to open them up and kill each other. It's very important that while they're still sleeping, you got to do your thing. Now, at this point, you can move each of these cells to your mating nooks, like some of my mating nooks here you can see. And you can just, what I do is just let them be placed right between frames. If I had to maybe sometimes widen up the frame gap a little bit. But you can see in my bottom left image, a nice cell with royal jelly at the top. You can see it through the plastic. And you just start inserting these into these mating nooks. And your mating nooks may look like this. And at that point, the queen is going to emerge out of that queen cell. And from that mating nook, she's going to take a mating flight. And in that mating flight, she will mate with 20 to 30 drones. And then she will come back and start laying. And you can begin evaluating the egg laying pattern of your new queen that you raised.